Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the second book of Samuel, that is Shmuel Bet. We are now about to read Perek Chaf Bet, which is chapter 22. In this chapter, we change the mode significantly, the mode of speech, the mode of writing, and our the approach, the presentation of David himself. We see a different side of David that we haven't been seeing this entire time. Today we have a taste of David, the David of the Psalms, the David, the poet, David the singer, David the one who wrote and sang beautiful prayers, beautiful songs, beautiful praises to God. It is fascinating that this particular chapter was chosen of all of David's songs. I have no particular insight into why this specific one. There are many psalms we know written by David that one reads when one reads the book of Tehillim, the book of Psalms. However, this one was chosen to be here. And here is where most of this book, of the book of Samuel, was the narrative of David's life, his origins, his exploits, his successes and his failures, etc. I do want to point out something that, to me, is the most glaring of all, so that when we read through this chapter and we extol and we feel how David extols God, and how David praises God, and how David prays to God, how David gives credit to God, how David imagines God's power and might and awesomeness, that David, as far as we know, as far as is recorded in the text, there isn't a single place in David's life where there was an overt miracle. And I contrast this to the song, the famous song of of the sea, the song that the people of Israel sang after the splitting of the sea and the drowning of the Egyptians in the sea. That song, they also sang about the great might of God and how they were saved. But that was an overt miracle. Here we see none. But nonetheless, David sees this greatness in God. And I would posit also, as we read through this, that one gets the feeling that this particular song was sung prior to the sin of Bathsheba. There are other songs that have in Tehillim that might give us the sense of the remorse that David felt for the terrible deed that he had done. One doesn't get that so much through this one, but as we go through it, you may disagree with me. We'll see. But because it's kind of unclear exactly when this was written, but we have some hints, so let's see what we can get. It's long. To me, this is some of the most beautiful, not just to me, to anyone that reads it, this is some of the most beautiful writing, some of the most powerful religious writing in history. And therefore, every word is precious. Every word we should think about, contemplate. We can never do it justice, but as it is a long chapter, we're going to have to divide this into several podcasts. So this is really what it's all about. All of this that we've been reading about David's life, David is going to put this into a spiritual context, in the context of his relationship with God. And it's something that we can and all should try to emulate based on our own lives that presumably have no overt miracles, but we all have our struggles. We have our enemies, whether they be human enemies or illness enemies or poverty enemies or any kind of enemy. To the extent that we can overcome them, we do. To the extent that we suffer from them, we do. Ultimately, we walk out at the other end and we look to God and say, this is what I've learned, this is what I've gained. You, God, are the one in control of this, and you are the one that put me here, and I thank you for that. And this is really what David is doing. So here we go. Vayidaber David l'Adonai, and David spoke to God at Divrei Hashira Hazos, the words of this song. It doesn't say David prayed to him. He's not requesting anything of him. He's not, but rather David spoke these words. These were an expression of his relationship. When did he say this? Biyom hitzil Adonai oto mikaf kol oivav umikaf shehol. On the day that God saved him from all of his enemies and from Saul. Now, why was Saul specified? There's a lot of there was lots of enemies that David suffered from throughout his career, and we learned about them from Goliath, Goliath, to Saul, to Naval, to his son Avshalom, and over the years there were plenty. But I get the sense from here that it's trying to tell us that this song was written when David was finally victorious over Saul, which was prior to the latter enemies. David, of course, had suffered from the Philistines. I mean, there was lots and lots of enemies, but prior to the enemies that came in wake of the Bathsheba scandal. But regardless, that is how it goes. So let's begin the song. Vayomar, and he said, Adonai, God, Sal'i tzudasi umefalti li. You are my rock, you are my fortress, and you are my savior. You are the one who saves me. Falti here, saving, is from the same language as a refugee, like a refugee who is saved from war. So you plucked me out of all of these battles and saved me, and you are the one. Now, David has to identify, and we all have to identify this, because it's not obvious. It's not clear. He could have attributed his being saved to lots of things. There was never any overt a miracle which was identified, or there's never a place where God, openly said, "I'm going to save you," and He saved him. But rather, in David's life, he gave that credit to God. The ultimate humility is to say, it is God that saved me, as opposed to me and my own greatness, my own wisdom, my own strength, my own power. This is the ultimate in spiritual humility, is giving the credit to God rather than taking the credit yourself. Elohei Tzuri, my God. I'm sorry, I'm just saying. The God of my rock, or God is the rock, Echesebo, and I will take shelter in Him. Magini, He's the one that protects me, V'keren Yeshi, and He is the horn of, or the Karen, or it could be read as the I see a translation, the champion, or the Karen Yeshi, the one who is the Karen of my. The champion of my being saved, Miskabi. He is the one in whom I take refuge, who I surround myself with to be safe. He's the one that keeps me safe. Uminusi, He's the place where I run. Moshi'i, He saves me mechamas toshien. He saves me from Hamas. Hamas is violence that one perpetrates on another to take things away from the other. We've mentioned this when we read through the books of the prophets together on this podcast. The Hamas refers to the opposite of true justice. True justice is when through a system of justice, things can be exchanged between one person and the other. Hamas is a world where people take what they want from others through violence. That is what Hamas is. Me Hamas toshieni, God saves me from that. So, again, here, David says, I could take refuge in my own strength. I could take refuge in my, in my armies. I could take refuge in all the various, in my wisdom or my skills. But no, I take refuge in God. Mehulal ekra Adonai. I call God Mehulal, praised. Ume'avai ivashea. And I was saved from my enemies. So I praised God rather than criticized Him or questioned His judgment. I praised Him, and from my enemies I was saved. Ki afafuni mishbere maves, because I was in bad shape, right? Afafuni mishbere maves, the those that give out, that hand out death. Mishbere here is lishbor ochel, comes to that's the same language of by Joseph, who gave out food. but these are the mishberei maves, those who give out death. The purveyors of death surrounded me. Nachalei v'lial va'asuni. The rivers of Belial. Belial is, remember we said Anshe Belial, what meant people of violence, people of bullies. So the rivers of violence, Yavasuni, terrified me. I was in awful fear and surrounded by death, surrounded by so many who wanted to tackle and take and destroy me. Chevlei Sheol Sabuni, the pangs, the pains of Sheol, of hell, surrounded me. Kidmuni Mokshe Maves, the traps that bring about death were preceded me. They were in front of me. They were around me wherever I turned. Batzarli, when I had trouble, Ekra Adonai, I called God, Ve'el Elohai Ekra, and I called out to my God. Vayishma mehechalo koli, and from his abode he heard my voice. V'shavosi bi'oznov, and he heard my cries in his ears. Vayisko ash vatir ash haaretz, and the land shaked and swayed back and forth. Mosdos hashamayim yirgazu, the foundations of the heavens trembled. Vayisko ashu ki charalo, and they were trembling or rocking because God was angry. Here, David is visualizing this image of God being angry with the injustice being done to him, and thereby shaking the heavens, the very heavens themselves. Allah shon bi'apo, smoke came up from his nose. Ve'esh mipiv tochel, and fire came, devouring fire came out of his mouth. Gechalim ba'aru mimenu, coals, blazing hot coals, burning hot coals came out from God. Vayet shamayim vayired, and he bent the heavens down, and he came down to earth. Va'arafel tachas raglov, and there was a thick cloud of fog beneath his legs when he came down to earth. Vayikav al kiruv vayaof, and he rode upon a cherub and flew through the sky. Vayera al kanfei ruach, and he was seen flying on the wings of the wind. Vayoshes choshech sevivosav sukos, and he made around him sukkos are often usually mean like gazebos or huts, right? But he made these huts of darkness surrounding him. Chashras mayim avesh chakim, the thick clouds dripping water. Minoga negdo ba'arugach le'esh, in the shine that was opposite him, the shine that came forth from God, coals of fiery flame were burning. So the image of the darkness, of the clouds, of the fog, of trembling, the earthquakes and the fire and the coals and the smoke. David is painting this tremendous image. But if you remember, David's victories were just victories like any other. There was no great thunder clouds and thunderclaps and splittings of the seas and darknesses and hails from the sky and all that, which you find in other parts of the Bible. David is imagining this image of God helping him through his victories, even where it's not obvious. Imagine thinking in our own lives of this power and might of God behind us, even as we go about our own simple lives, doing our own simple things, keeping that image in our mind. The power and the might and the strength and the beauty of every moment of our lives becomes so powerful. This is what spirituality is about. This is seeing spirituality in the simple things that we do every day. Yar'eim min shamayim Adonai v'elyon yitain kolo. God came screaming out of heaven or thundering out of heaven. Or aim is the thundering noise from sky. That's how God came out of Elyon Yitain Kolo. And he sent his voice from on high. Vayishlach chitzim vayipitzeim, and he threw down arrows, presumably at my enemies, and scattered them. Barak, he sent out lightning via home and caused them confusion so that they would run. Vayiru afikei yam, and the afikei yam, the bottoms of the sea, was seen, right? Yigalu mosdos tevel. This is an image that deliberately drawing upon the image of the splitting of the sea, where the bottom was visualized, right? That Yigalu mosdos tevel, the foundations of the entire world, the entire universe, were revealed, bigarat Adonai, because of the scream of God, minishmat ruach apo, because of the breath of the wind, and the coming from his from his nostrils. This, I'm going to stop here. This is the end of verse 16, as 22a. We'll continue reading in probably another 2 portions, this beautiful song of David, which is really the end of the second book of Samuel, and it gives us the feeling, the understanding of giving a spiritual impression of who David was. We just read all about the exploits of his life. Now we want to know about the verses want to teach us. The prophets wants to teach us what David's soul was like, and what So we brought this song, which is almost identical to one of the chapters in Psalm 18, and this one was chosen to be placed here. Thank you so much for studying this together with me. Looking forward to studying the rest of chapter 22 and the rest of the book of Samuel together. Have a wonderful day.